What's up, everybody? Welcome into this Monday afternoon edition of Pushing the Pile. I'm Mike Renner. He's Kyle Long. No Matt Ryan today, unfortunately. He didn't want to talk about, Kyle, his heir apparent to the Atlanta Falcons QB throne, apparently. He was scared. He was scared to talk Michael Penix and how good he looked.
He was up late. He was worried. He was watching that game. He was like, this young buck can just sling it, man. There's nothing that this guy, Michael Penix Jr., can't do. That was so much fun to watch. That was a great segue, great announcement leading into a segue into our opening conversation, which is obviously that Falcons Commanders Sunday Night Football recap. And what a treat we were in for last night, getting to watch those two young quarterbacks go. And time again, we've been amazed at what Jaden Daniels has been able to do. And in Michael Penix's coming out party on a national stage, international stage, in the nation's capital last night, it was so much fun to watch those two guys go toe-to-toe. The crowd noise, the moment, the situational football, it was never too big for Michael Penix Jr. I'm curious as to what you thought, because you said after last week, the stat line wasn't indicative of how well Michael Penix Jr. played. What did you see from your guy?
Yeah, this week, I think the stat line was indicative, but it wasn't quite indicative of how mature he looked, right? It was not a fake 223 yards, one touchdown, one interception, goes 19 of 35. The completion percentage was right on the money. Like, he missed some throws, some plays that were to be made on that football field. Jaden Daniels outplayed him. Like, Jaden Daniels, throw for throw, was the better quarterback in that game. Not a surprise. He's been so nasty. We'll get to him here in just a second and his rookie campaign and how much of an outlier it is in the rest of NFL history. But Penix, the things you see from him already in terms of anticipation, in terms of pocket presence, in terms of his ability to handle pressure. I love that 23 pressure dropbacks this season. He's taken only 3 sacks. Like, the guy has not let that get to him when this Falcons offensive line is not like the greatest, right? They are not a top tier line that's given him all day to throw. So he has to play a quicker brand of football that a lot of rookies are accustomed to. But you're already seeing him handle all that. And then the clutch play at the end, the touchdown pass to Kyle Pitts on a 4th down. That's one, when the ball had to be thrown. If he waits any longer, the window is no longer there. And then 2, where the ball had to be thrown. So the plays that you saw him make down the stretch, you just feel really good about where he is on his developmental curve. There's obviously things that need to be fixed. And the reason I was worried about him even projecting from Washington to the NFL was that he did miss a lot of throws on tape. He is not the most accurate guy, but I do think that will improve as he gets more comfortable. But the fact that he's already playing this comfortable this early on, if you're a Falcons fan, you got to be really, really excited about where this future of this franchise is going.
You got to be super happy. And then you have to kind of look in the rearview mirror a bit and be like, how much meat do we leave on the bone there in the middle part of the season when things were not right with Kirk Cousins? Should we have pulled the emergency parachute earlier? Obviously there is a future for the Atlanta Falcons team, but this offense looks completely different with this guy, Michael Penix, in there at quarterback. And you and I were talking about it this morning. I called you. I was like, what'd you think about the game? We talked about Penix a little bit. And I said, you know what? Some of those missed throws, I just think that the receivers aren't used to a guy who can get it out there in that part of the field. And they had to see it to believe it. And last night was kind of the hello world moment for Michael Penix Jr. and that receiving core on those deep balls. He's going to give you opportunities. If anything, he'll put it further than it needs to be, which I think is a much better place to be than the underthrow. I know there's DPI and that kind of thing that happens week in, week out. But, a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, we complained about the fact that he's not giving his guys runway with nobody behind him. Michael Penix is going to do that for these receivers. And we saw last night that there's a number of guys who can go make big plays. I think it was 2 4th downs of plus 11 yards there that they had to convert at the end of the football game. Just a tremendous ability to put the blinders on and go make it happen. One thing that stood out to me about Michael Penix Jr. was his pocket presence, his pocket mobility without getting out of his throwing stance. The guy is like, we used to watch Brady, a guy who couldn't run at all, maneuver the pocket like water. You know what I mean? The guy could just find the path of least resistance. And there were a few times when the sky was falling and the pocket was collapsing around him. When he maintained poise, he was able to stay in that throwing demeanor and get that football down the field. I thought it was so impressive last night.
Really was. Unfortunately, though, like you mentioned, you got to have a little regret saying, if we would put this guy in during that stretch when Kirk Cousins was really in the tank, when they were playing, the Broncos, the Chargers, those playoff teams that they just could not move the ball against offensively, we might be talking a team that had already wrapped up the NFC South instead of a team that's now looking up at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Unfortunately, looks like they will be missing the playoffs when it's all said and done now. But the team that's not on the other side of the ball there, Washington Commanders, they clinch a playoff berth for the first time since 2020. And that 2021 felt a little different because that was when they went 7-9, right? Still won the division. That was when they were below 500, still won the NFC East. This feels like the start of something. That year, 2020, felt like, man, we almost didn't want to back in. We almost wanted the draft pick that we would have gotten otherwise. This feels like the start of what could be or should be a team that is going to be running, not only, could be in the contention for the NFC East, but for Super Bowls here sooner rather than later.
And I think it's important to point this out. And you and I talk about culture a lot, and we talk about roster building a lot. And often it's not just getting the right guys with the right skills, but it's the right guys with a winning mindset or guys who have come from winning teams. And throughout the course of the year, I've seen guys like Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti step up for this team. Obviously, Tyler Biadasz went down yesterday. That was tough to see. But they've got guys in that building who have been on winning teams and been with winning programs. And when I look at the team that I root for every week, it's the Chicago Bears. I see a lot of good players that haven't had a lot of success prior to being there. And you expect them to just through osmosis or something to be able to create a winning culture. Culture comes from learned experiences and the belief that you have in something that you've done before. And last night, Biadasz goes down, Nick Allegretti, the left guard, as it was beautifully noted by the broadcast booth. Nick Allegretti was calling the mics. He was calling the plays. He was setting protections. He was making checks. Those are the type of guys you can rely on and build something special with. And while they may not be the all pros, they know how to win football games. They've done it for a long time. So credit to Dan Quinn and that organization for bringing the right guys in to help their young quarterback. And then, a wily, salty vet like Zach Ertz. He was that drop at the beginning of the game. First off, fantastic throw from Jaden Daniels at the high point, back of the end zone to Zach Ertz. Zach just couldn't bring it in. Well, he made him pay. He had 2 more. He should have had 3 in that football game. They've done a masterful job in Washington. And to your point, we're going to be talking about this for a very long time because Jaden ain't going nowhere.
I love you bringing up the culture there because it's so evident. That's like the biggest thing when you watch this Washington team is just the belief, the unflappability. And it starts not only, with what you mentioned, those guys coming in and your head coach who's been to a Super Bowl, but Jaden Daniels has a demeanor that is just different for a rookie. The fact that they're trusting him to still throw the ball when you're in, scoring range the way they were in overtime, whereas basically they probably still could have kicked a field goal there and won the game, but you're still trusting him in those situations to make the right decision. And that, back-to-back weeks, they're down 10 points. Both those weeks leads them back for wins when you're on, the doorstep of a playoff berth. I do just think that what we're seeing from him, his ability as a dual threat, 127 rushing yards in this game, just broke Robert Griffin's rookie rushing record of 815 yards. It's just, if you're a Commanders fan, even going back to RG3 and what he looked like as a rookie, this is a different animal. RG3 won Rookie of the Year. Jaden Daniels is about to win Rookie of the Year. But this is not, there's no shoe to drop here like there was with RG3. There is only actually more room for growth, in my opinion, watching Jaden Daniels on tape and watching the talent around him. The more pieces they put, the more this offense can and should be, if not the best, one of the top 3 in the NFL for the next couple of years.
There's a few things I want to ask you about. Number one, is this the best rookie season of all time by a quarterback?
That's tough. I just, in terms of like pure value, I I think it almost has to be. Now, I don't know way back in the day how they looked. I've only obviously been doing
let's
this for
let's talk the recent
25 or
memory
so
here,
years.
because really I'm asking about CJ Stroud's rookie campaign or Jaden Daniels' rookie campaign, because both have lit the world on fire in different ways. And Jaden being so versatile and CJ being so poised and just five-star general like his rookie year. They were both so impressive, but you're a guy who's in the weeds more than I am. I'm interested on your take.
I do think, I think it is, in my opinion. I think it's more impressive than, so Andrew Luck, obviously, was probably just in terms of what he had to deal with, no talent around him, carrying a team to the playoffs. I think it's a little bit just in terms of his ability to dual threat, does everything for that offense. It's that running game. It opens up the passing game. It's so important to that offense that I do think, even, from a value perspective, he's a little bit more than even Andrew Luck was as a rookie. But we're obviously comparing little apples to oranges. He was a 5-year starter in college. And if you are fans of the NFL game, I think you love the way the college game is going with NIL money and with the transfer portal, Daniels obviously being one of the beneficiaries of it, is that these guys now get seasoning. They get Daniels a 5-year starter, Bo Nix a 5-year starter, Michael Penix spent 6 years in college before he got to the NFL. They're hitting the NFL, and they're like year 2, year 3 players that we were seeing at the quarterback position a decade ago, because everyone at the quarterback position up until NIL money the advice was get there as soon as possible, get to the second contract. That's all that matters. Now it's like, if you can be making a couple $1 million a year in college, hold that as long as you can, develop as much as you can at the place you're supposed to be, against your peers before your head starts spinning at the NFL level. So now these guys who are 5-year starters, 4-year starters, who get the seasoning, they get to the NFL and they look, like Michael Penix Jr. and Jane Daniels look. They look like they're ready. And so as an NFL fan, I'm very, excited about the future of the quarterback position, because I think we're going to finally see guys get developed at the collegiate level more so than ever. All right.
I agree with you, man.
That was our Sunday night football.
Develop.
That was our Sunday night football recap. No Matt Ryan as always, but we're still going to break down quarterbacks that we saw, performances we saw around the NFL, and our coveted Quarterback of the Week award right after this. Let's get to some quarterback observations from week 17, where we had about a zillion backup quarterbacks, it seemed, see either starting time, either mop-up time. We had Spencer Rattler in New Orleans. We had Joe Flacco in Indy. We had Tyler Huntley in Miami. We had Dorian Thompson-Robinson in Cleveland. We had Kenny Pickett in Philadelphia. And we had Tanner McKee. Philadelphia got to their third-string quarterback. And so I had a couple observations that I wanted to get off my chest. You tell me what you think of them, and then you tell me what you got. One, Philadelphia is just a house. You could put me back there, and I think they would beat the Dallas Cowboys. You had two guys, Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee. McKee, a 6th-rounder a few years ago. Kenny Pickett, obviously a failed experiment as a 1st-rounder in Pittsburgh. But no matter who's behind center there, look at their stats. Almost 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, not a lot of incompletions. It's just that situation is the best for any quarterback in the NFL, pretty objectively, I'd say, at this point. And then the other one, Dorian Thompson-Robinson might be, he's on pace for, if he gets to the threshold of attempts, the worst start to a career at the quarterback position in NFL history. Right now, he has had 252 career dropbacks, 227 attempts. He has 1 touchdown compared to 10 interceptions, and he is averaging 3.8 yards per attempt. He's basically like Najee Harris running the football every time he drops back to pass. I think the Browns are tanking. I think they're quiet tanking, but they cannot be serious putting him out there when they have Jameis Winston and saying that they're still trying to win football games.
Yeah, that's one of those Zoomer phrases, quiet quitting. And I think that the Cleveland Browns are going full Zoomer mode right now, where they're showing up to the office. They're letting the in stack up. There's nothing in the outbox, and they're kind of just biding their time. You saw they restructured their deal with Deshaun Watson the other day. So obviously they are thinking about the future in Cleveland. And, when you said worst start to an NFL career, first thing I did is I went over here to my keyboard. I typed in Jamarcus Russell, and, he had 18 touchdowns. He was
Yeah.
354 of 680, 52.5%, 4,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 23 picks. Not terrible when you're comping him to Dorian Thompson Robinson. But yeah, it's I don't want to beat up on a guy, but it feels like a team that is not putting their best foot forward for the team. And if I was in that locker room, I would be bang. It would be the scene from Rudy where I bring my jersey in, I put it on the table, and I said, "This is for Jameis. This is for Jameis." And there's a line of guys out the door who are like, "Are we trying to win or are we trying to lose?" As far as the Philadelphia Eagles conversation, I mean, I fully agree with you. Outside of maybe Minnesota, I would say that group in Philadelphia is built to win regardless of who is at quarterback. And it makes me wonder whether or not I should skew my judgment of Jalen Hurts as a quarterback because of the strength that team has and how important that is for the quarterback position. Obviously, the offensive line, they've got big time receivers. They've got the best running back in football. There's a lot to like there with Philadelphia. But Tanner McKee, I look at this guy's picture. I'm like, I think I interviewed him for a CPA position about 2 years ago prior to him joining the Philadelphia Eagles. But no, in all
He's a
seriousness,
Mormon.
3 for 4, 54 yards, yeah. So he's honest. Okay, he's going to be he's keep you honest on your taxes. We're not going to get in trouble on the back end there. That's unbelievable for Pickett, McKee to see those guys have success. It's really good, and for the Philadelphia Eagles, it has to feel good knowing that you can get it done with the 2 and the 3 out there at quarterback.
Yeah, I actually, selfishly, I was pretty high on Tanner McKee coming out. I had him as second round grade. I thought he was a guy that was super accurate. So to see him play some football and play well, hope that man gets more of a shot either there or somewhere else in time. All right, let's get to now. Stop talking about the guys who are not supposed to be out there, but the one who not only is supposed to be out there, but is playing at a level we haven't quite seen from him over the course of his career. It's our quarterback of the week, and it's Baker Mayfield. 27 to 32, 359 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, tied for the most in Bucs history, and they had a pretty good guy there for the last few years prior to Baker Mayfield playing quarterback. So what have you seen from Baker Mayfield this week and throughout the season that's basically looked like, again, the best we've ever seen from over the course of his career?
Well, first and foremost, I'll just start with the way that his teammates talk about him and the way that he carries himself on the football field. That's what a man is supposed to carry himself like. That's what a quarterback is supposed to carry himself like. He is the definition of the word dude. And you know what? They've dealt with injuries at some big positions in Tampa Bay. He hasn't blinked. He hasn't complained. He showed up and he's just balled out. This is his 4th game with 4+ passing touchdowns this season. That's unbelievable. And you have to give a lot of credit to Baker Mayfield, but also you want to give a shout out to those bigs up there for Tampa Bay. They've been able to redefine the way we look at the Tampa Bay offense. For a very long time, it was a throw-first offense. They lacked the ability to run the ball. They struggled in gap schemes, but now they can do it all. And that makes Baker Mayfield that much more dangerous. It gives him advantageous looks, and he is as confident as any quarterback. It's just funny. I'm on Twitter last night, and I'm looking at pictures of Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield in the Carolina Panthers uniform competing in training camp. And then you take a look, and it's Sam Darnold leading the Minnesota Vikings to the potential 1 seed in the NFC. And you've got Baker Mayfield, obviously, with a Herculean effort this season. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I give a lot of credit to Liam Cohen as well. He's been nails the entire year, reinventing the way that they get the ball down the field, whether it's a screen game to those running backs, whether it's handing it off, creative ways to get the ball into the hands of some of these other receivers, not named Mike Evans.
I have a take that I'm going to drop on you that I want your opinion of, because Baker we talked about some of the best rookie years of all time with quarterback position. Baker had one of those back in 2018. He was awesome. 7.7 yards per attempt, 27 touchdown passes. That broke the rookie record at the time. He was truly on a trajectory to be not only just like a franchise quarterback, be like a Cleveland legend. But I think the trade for Odell Beckham Jr. completely ruined his career in Cleveland because of the same things we were talking about or have talked about this year with Josh Allen. Josh Allen has stepped up as a leader more without Stephon Diggs. He has been more vocal in that locker room. Guys look more to him. It is unquestionably his team now, when before there was kind of, I don't want to say a schism, but there was a shared responsibility role or a shared role of who was the top dog. I think when they traded for Odell Beckham Jr., Baker Mayfield took a back seat in terms of not leadership, but just like mentality. And I think you saw it on tape. He deferred to Odell Beckham Jr. and how he felt in that moment. And he wasn't the guy anymore dictating that locker room, the way he was at Oklahoma, the way he was as a rookie in Cleveland, the way he is now in Tampa Bay, right? It's unquestionably that guy that everyone rallies around him, and they're not rallying around anyone else in that locker room. Mike Evans, a very quiet superstar wide receiver. They all defer, Chris Godwin as well. They defer to Baker. It's his team.
Yeah.
I think that was lost when they traded for Odell Beckham Jr.
I think that's a really interesting hypothesis. And it makes me think once again about the Chicago Bears. And I think about sort of that schism word, and it's DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. And you're supposed to have this superstar receiver, do it all guy, and you want to keep him happy. And you know that at times he says very little in the media, but the little that he says is a lot. And for a guy like Caleb Williams, you got to keep that guy happy. And for Baker Mayfield, he is in the perfect setup. And you talked about Mike Evans. He's the quietest superstar we've ever seen. The guy just goes out there and gets 1,000 yards every year, doesn't say squat about anything. And Baker Mayfield's the unquestioned leader. When you get a guy like Odell Beckham, particularly at that point in his career, he was so popular. He was an enigma in the NFL. And you are forced to kind of take a back seat to a guy like that. And I think it's a great hypothesis.
Yeah, I do you obviously know more than me about the dynamic in NFL locker rooms, but I know that dynamic. It's every walk of life. You know, any job you're doing, if that's the case, like when you're deferring to someone else, when you should be the leader, you're just not going to be at your best consistently. So I do think Baker Mayfield, we're finally seeing it. And if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, you got to be happy as heck about it. All right, that's our quarterback recap. After this, we're going to get Jonathan Jones to join the program. He's going to break down the Deshaun Watson restructure. The Chiefs, are they going to bench their starters against the Denver Broncos? May other teams be benching their starters? We'll get to all that and more right after this. Jonathan Jones joins the program to break down some of the biggest news and storylines heading out of Week 17. We're going to start with this because I saw this the other day, and I don't think a lot of people quite understood exactly the rationale for it. It was Deshaun Watson getting his contract restructured and having another year put on at the back of it. What exactly were the Browns trying to do with this deal exactly?
Yeah, Mike, a lot of people probably didn't understand it because a lot of the reporting was all over the place. And so, that's a somewhat subtle shot at competitors, I guess. Here's what I would like. Here's like the really basic way that I can explain it is that, yes, it is technically an extension. He got a year added to the deal. He gets no new money, but he gets every dollar of his fully guaranteed contract, $92 million. So if you consider the rest of his contract a 2-year, $92 million deal, you now need to consider it a 3-year, $92 million deal. That's going to be for the purposes of the salary cap, right? You're going to be able to lessen the salary cap burden in 2025, which in turn allows you to, in theory, field a more competitive roster, right? Re-sign some of your guys, bring in some free agents, but also, and that would be one of the reasons why Deshaun Watson would agree to this, but also one of the reasons that the Cleveland Browns would want this is if they get the same Deshaun Watson that they have gotten over the past 2 years, or if they get a worse version of Deshaun Watson, because now let's remember, of course, he's coming off Achilles surgery from October, they are going to be able to get out of his contract after the 2025 season much easier than before, right? So it will be less financially painful to extricate yourself from that contract after next season due to this contract adjustment. So that is what is happening. He is not taking a cent less. He's getting paid almost literally at the exact same time. But this is going to be a salary cap mechanism to, one, keep the Browns competitive. Two, let's say he plays even better. Let's say he returns to Houston Texans form. Well, now you're going to want to hang on to him in 2026, and you're going to have him, again, less salary cap burden, field a more competitive roster then. But if he plays like he has, or worse, you can get out of it after next year.
That's smart. That's really smart, Mike. I mean, whether or not, JJ laid that out beautifully. Thank you for the simpletons at home like myself. If he plays well, you've got him for an extra year. If he plays poorly, your cap hit for the remainder of the contract is easy relative to what it would have been. So I heard you break the news on Sunday. I didn't know what the hell you were talking about, but the way you just explained it to me, I get it now. Thank you, Jonathan.
And to add some more, the cap goes up every year, or should go up every year. This is why, a cap dollar in future years is less percentage of the cap than a cap dollar today. So from that perspective, they're banking on no COVID happening and the dollars being trending downwards yet again. A lot of teams have nothing to play for here in Week 18. It's an interesting scenario. It happens almost every single year, but I think this one is unique in that we have some teams that have nothing to play for, playing some teams that not only have nothing to play for, but are probably actively trying to lose because they're at the top of the draft, whether it's someone like the New England Patriots facing up against the Buffalo Bills. So I think it's Chiefs, Bills, Texans, Eagles truly have not a thing to play for in terms of their seeding as the playoffs go. They will be the Bills the number 2 in the AFC, the Chiefs the number 1, the Texans the number 4, and the Eagles the number 2. Those are set in stone at this point. Are all those teams planning on benching their starters this week, or do we think maybe the Eagles let Saquon Barkley rip for that record?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the Eagles wind up doing with Saquon Barkley. I think probably the most realistic scenario, I would say, would be let him go in there for a quarter, and if things are going well, maybe you let him chase it, or you just say, all right, you suited up. We gave it the old college try. We're lucky to get out of this, healthy. You rushed for 17 yards. That's going to have to be that. I think that could happen. That's not source. That's just feeling. But, we will certainly see there. As far as the Texans go, they've been playing very poorly the last couple of weeks. And we heard from Mike Tomlin earlier today at the podium talking about the idea of momentum, or just at the very least, just good vibes going into the postseason tournament. So if you're the Texans, you really need to play better football in January. So why not start at the start of January playing good football, even in this meaningless game? The Bills, I don't see Josh Allen playing, but the Bills are going to be faced with the same challenge like the Kansas City Chiefs, who are not going to play Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce or Chris Jones with the calf, maybe not Joe Tooney because of how essential he is to their entire operation. You're going to run out of bodies. You can't rest everybody, right? And so you have 53 guys. You only have 2 practice squad elevations, and you have the 7 inactives. So, yeah, you will for sure not dress your quarterback if you're the Bills or if you're the Chiefs, right? But after that, you're going to dress some guys and hope you don't have to play them. There's only so many offensive linemen that you have, or defensive linemen, et cetera, et cetera. You also, you're going to be banged up a little bit. Not everyone's going to be healthy. So you're going to play guys who otherwise, if this were the 3rd preseason game, would not be seeing their jersey at all. But it's not. The Chiefs, though, and Kyle and I discussed this yesterday, they're going to have between 24 and 25 days off, right? We don't know if they're going to play on Saturday or Sunday of the divisional round, but if they play on Sunday, it's 25 days off. If it's Saturday, it's 24 days off. That's unheard of. You don't get that amount of time off. And so Andy Reid is certainly going to have some tough physical practices with those guys, even though they're not playing against Denver coming up. And then, you hope that you are going to be sharp and focused enough come mid-January, but also there's no other choice. That's what it has to be.
And I think couple their seed with the fact that they have the luxury of having so much experience in that locker room, being to this postseason and winning the whole thing. He's got a method to the madness, and the guys aren't going to blink. If he says jump, they'll ask how high. As it pertains to the guys who are going to be playing in Kansas City Chiefs Week 18 matchup, there's only so many offensive linemen. So, I'm thinking about Creed Humphrey. I'm thinking about Trey Smith. And obviously, there are backups, swing guards, swing tackles. It's going to be we got to tape up type game for all the players not named Joe Tooney, in my opinion. So, great point there, Jonathan.
Kyle, I want your take on how much rest does at the end of the year. Is there, are there real concerns about taking that long off of football and rust forming? Or at this point with this team, is health, getting your body right, far more important? And how much does like 2 weeks off or your body at this point in the season, how much recovery do you get in that time frame?
Well, I think it's important to point out that these practices, you can get a lot accomplished without having the physical toll of playing games or having a Wednesday, Thursday practice. Those are the big practices. I think that Andy Reid wants to keep these guys in game shape. The only way he can do that is to simulate the number of reps that they do in games, and that's throughout the course of the week. They get a lot of reps. We used to call it 1,000 rep Thursday in those practices because it just felt like we would run 1,000 plays. And while we weren't beating and banging on one another, it was a tremendous opportunity to not only flush our legs, but to keep us in shape. Andy does a great job with that.
All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining the program as he does every single Monday. We are going to take a quick break here. After that, going to get to Kyle's strongest take of the week. It's my favorite segment every single week, and I hope it's your guys's as well, because it's when Kyle comes to the table. He's had all Sunday to stew on something. He comes Monday and is like, this is the thing I want to talk about. It's his strongest take of the week. What do you got from week 17?
It started Saturday night when I nearly had a stroke in my hotel room right next to Central Park. And it was because I was watching the Cincinnati Bengals nearly fumble the end of that football game because of, in my opinion, poor clock management. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, you get Brown getting hurt, the timeout. You can no longer bleed clock. And then we're just going to run it in with Joe Burrow. Let's take a couple knees. That's what I'm saying. Get to 25 seconds, no timeouts for that rookie quarterback on the road, season on the line. Then we'll see what kind of mettle he has. But no, I don't think people understand. A minute 20 plus with a timeout is a freaking eternity in the National Football League. Unless you're Patrick Mahomes, you got 13 seconds. You got Travis Kelce. You've got a soft cover 2 defense by Sean McDermott's crew. But seriously, none of these coaches have played Madden, and it's obvious to me because in Madden, you get to play like 6 games in a row. You get like 35 situational awareness, game clock management situations that you get to run through. I think that there should be an entry exam that's viewable by fans of the team. Let's use Dan Campbell, for example, interviewing for the Detroit job. Before he even gets in the building to interview, he needs to complete a live stream style event, maybe pay-per-view. There you go. Boom. We made even more money where we get to see him play in a simulated game, manage the clock, manage if we're going for it on 4th down. Because I promise you this, these guys, a lot of them don't know what they're doing when it comes to managing the clock. They go to the locker room with timeouts in their pocket. They line up off and soft and Hail Mary, and they allow a 15-yard out against the Washington Commanders that ends up derailing your whole year, makes you sell your house in the North Shore of Chicago, makes you get fired from being the Bears head coach. That's not the only guy in the National Football League who's going through this. We saw it last night with Raheem Morris. We're going to see it again in the playoffs. It is almost laughable, embarrassing that this is the cream of the crop. The head coaches in the National Football League are supposed to be the guys, the Jedi Order, and yet they don't know basic game and clock management. I don't know if you feel the same way I do, Mike. I'm sorry for the rant, but I almost had a stroke, and I'm okay now.
I will, if there's one defense you can give, it's that maybe he didn't trust his kicker for obvious reasons that we saw a little later on in that game. But at that point, with where they were, it's like, you trust your kicker, in my opinion.
Yep.
Especially more so than your defense with how they fared this season. But I agree. They're such easy wins. And every fan, not want to say every fan at home, but your knowledgeable fans at home have seen this stuff enough. If you're there watching every single week, it's almost like you're taking a test yourself by watching these games to know what to do in clock management situations. Probably more so than a lot of NFL coaches. And it's complete malpractice to not pass these with flying colors. If you're not capable of doing it as a head coach, if you have too much on your mind,
gimmies.
Delegate one person to be your clock management guy in your ear, up in the booth. I've seen how big these staffs are at the NFL level. They have guys who specialize in every single thing, every which way. Get one analytics guy off your staff who knows these things down pat and have his only job be to say, timeout here, no timeout here, do the XYZ. This is a situation calls for that. Like, these are easy wins. And I do agree that if you want, with how easy development is with AI nowadays, come up with a game for these guys to play consistently that gives them scenarios, how many timeouts they have left, what the score is, what yard line is, and make them run through a zillion scenarios, like every single week, have them run through 100 every single week just to get their brain thinking about those sort of things, all the variables at play, because it's such low-hanging fruit. But in the NFL, with how many games are one-score games, damn near, like 50+% of them, a vast majority of your games every single season will be decided by thin margins. If you can't do that as a head coach consistently well, we saw with Andy Reid early on in his career with the Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to lose those big games too often. And now when he figured it out, all of a sudden, 3 Super Bowls, maybe the greatest coach of all time, because the clock management part of it is finally down pat. And so if you're an NFL head coach, I'm 100% agree with you.
I get on an airplane twice a week and fly like 2,000 miles to the Northeast to go do the top show for the pregame show. And when I get in the airplane, I buckle my seatbelt and I fall asleep, because I know that these guys have, especially the young guys, have thousands of hours on the Microsoft Flight Simulator where there are errors that can be built in. There are checklists that they have to go through dozens of times. They are on top of it. I doubt that a guy like, let's just say, Mike McCarthy has ever fired up the old PS5 and played in a ranked matchup where more often than not, it comes down to game management, clock management, situational awareness. We need to have more of that. And if there is a way to implement a system like an AI type system that you're talking about, that needs to happen. And the fans, before they hire these guys, should have visibility to the decision that they make.
I still remember Mike McCarthy, after he got fired from Green Bay, year out of football, he came to the PFF office and all of a sudden he was like, I know analytics now. I don't think he did. I don't like, it was like one day where we prepped him on like a few things we did at PFF, and all of a sudden it's like McCarthy buys into analytics. I don't think guys are really hammering home those numbers or hammering home those situations. They need to be, unfortunately, because we see it time and time again. All right. We're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to overreaction versus reality coming out of week 17 to wrap up the show right after this. It is overreaction versus reality time, where we take some of the biggest storylines heading out of week 17 and say, were they overreactions or are they reality going forward? First one, the Giants had the most damaging win of week 17. Is that an overreaction or is that reality?
Man, it has to be a reality, right? Just because of the fact that they have needs that are going to be at the top of the first round, in my opinion, and they have gotten themselves out of the control your own destiny as it pertains to picking who you want situation. And then rolling into week 18, they're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles. And make no mistake, the Eagles aren't, very concerned about winning this football game. They know who they are as a team, and they can hurt the Giants even further. We could be looking at the Giants falling to 3-14. or 4 and 13, and it would impact that draft even more. And, I was on social media, probably falling victim to some Photoshop, but I saw Shedeur Sanders with a pair of those sick-ass retro Dion cleats, and they were in the New York Giants colorway with the New York Giants logo, and talk of the town is, we know where we're going. But now it looks like you gotta rebook your flights. You gotta maybe get a new pair of cleats or donate those ones, give them to Malik Neighbors or something along those lines. But yes, the Giants, you had one job. You had one job. And there's only one thing that those New York Giants fans want, and that's the quarterback that you deem to be the best. And, quite frankly, probably not even the one that you deem to be the best, because we saw who you deem not to be worthy, and that's Saquon Barkley. He's got 2,000 yards now.
Yeah, the Giants have had just one nightmare after another, and not only do they have the most damaging win, like they had a more damaging win than any other team had a loss. I know the Colts just eliminated themselves from playoff contention, but the Giants' win was even more impactful to that franchise because their quarterback hopes are gone at this point. Now, they could still go up and get them, but we've seen the price it takes to go up and get the number 1 overall pick, and we've seen how bad this Giants roster is. It's like, you get one or the other. If you go all in to get the guy, you end up like the Carolina Panthers, right? Where maybe they got the guy and they just have so little around him and have such a bad team that it just doesn't matter. It may not matter for his rookie contract when you give up that much. So, yeah, it's hard to argue. The Giants, undoubtedly, in my mind, had the most damaging Week 17.
It's got to get worse next week.
Reality. Yeah, dude. If the Eagles make them win, like if the Eagles don't try, that would be incredible. Drop them all the way down.
They're gonna give like Big Dom a headset. They're gonna say, "You're the head coach today. Have a great day." It's gonna be a Make-A-Wish day for Dom, and he's gonna be the head coach, and they're gonna lose the football game, and that'll be that.
Speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley obviously cracks 2,000 yards. He is, I think, pretty inarguably the best running back in the NFL this season. But overreaction versus reality, Bijan Robinson is the second best running back in the NFL this season.
I'm going to say overreaction. I think that Derrick Henry is still the guy that is right outside the door of Saquon Barkley's penthouse suite, and that's the best running back in football, penthouse suite. And if we continue to see Bijan Robinson have this type of production and have this type of dual threat ability in the run and the pass, I mean, I could see an easy path to him having this conversation again next year, maybe the answer being different. But as for right now, the full body of work that Derrick Henry has provided for the Baltimore Ravens and obviously his time with the Titans, that guy's the second best. If we're going to say Saquon's the best, it's probably going to be Derrick Henry.
Yeah, if I just want a running back, Derrick Henry's so good as a pure runner that I don't care if he can't do anything out of the backfield as a receiver, right? Like that's, if you're tipping the scales towards Bijan, it's because he is electric with the ball in his hands out in space, because he has great hands, because he can run
broken tackles
like wide receiver. We saw him put a double move on a corner last night. Obviously got missed by Michael Penix Jr., but like he can get open on his own. That's another layer to his game that's just like was kind of going untapped with Kirk Cousins. That's so dynamic. But I have to agree, if I'm picking one, it's Derrick Henry. But then that kind of tier behind is Bijan, in my opinion. It's Kenny Walker, and those two guys
when he plays
are true do-it-all throwback type of running backs. Like those are the guys that I remember from like the mid-2000s, like a LT, that were just like, they did everything for their teams. They caught the ball. They ran the ball. They did it all.
Matt Forte.
So Bijan, maybe Rich's top 10 pick, but he looks like he was as advertised. All right, there's your overreaction versus reality, and there's your episode of Pushing the File. We'll be back tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube channel. Until then, keep pushing.